Local and live, covering Franklin and Washington counties, it's Let's Talk TriState with Tiny and Katie.
Today on Let's Talk TriState, we're celebrating the holidays. And we're going to do that by celebrating the life of one of the greatest men that myself and the entire tri-state area has ever known. A man who gave selflessly of his time to others and those less fortunate, and made everyone's holiday season just that much brighter. That man we're talking about today is Bud Kline. Some of you may know Bud Kline by his famous name, Santa. And we have someone very special joining us today for the first time in an interview format, his grandson, Michael Kendrick. Now, you may be wondering why we are deciding to sit down and Let's Talk Tri-State with Bud Kline's grandson, Michael. There's a good reason for that, and you'll find that out in just a couple minutes. But first, in order to familiarize you with Bud Kline, we're going to play for you the last interview Bud ever did. It was on a podcast I hosted called Tiny Talks. It was about 3 years ago in December, and I reached out to Bud to set up the interview because I thought the Tri-State deserved to know more about the man behind the beard. This interview is about 15 minutes long. We're going to play it in its entirety. I'm not going to edit anything out. A word of warning for parents. We're going to pull back the curtain a little bit on Santa Claus. Now may be a good time to tell the kids to go play or do something else, maybe earmuffs. That choice is yours, but I think you know what we mean. Now, as far as this podcast interview goes that you're about to hear, you're going to hear some dates and times in this podcast that obviously were relevant back in 2021 that are not accurate today. We've left them in there just to preserve the podcast's integrity. Enjoy this podcast. Let it take you down memory lane like it's about to do for me and Bud Kline's grandson, Michael, who's joining us here today for the first time as Santa Claus.
Bud, I want you to, if you could, take us through your history, where you grew up and how you, I don't want to say stumbled onto it because I don't think someone could do as well as you do for as long as you do and it be a stumbling block, but how you got into just being known as Santa in our area.
Well, started out back in the early 60s. I had a gas station. I've lived in the west end of Hagerstown my whole life, but I had a gas station at the corner of Virginia Avenue and Marion, and I was selling Christmas trees. And I advertised in the paper that Santa would be there to talk to the kids, to bring your children in. Mm-hmm. And I bought a cheap suit. I'll put it on, and one of the customers came in, had a handicapped child. The child couldn't talk, but he could say ho-ho, and he stayed with me the whole time he was there. It did something to me that I just kept on going, and I kept doing it, and it just got into a thing that for a long time I had a hard time handling it because I was doing 200 and 300 times a Santa a year. Mm-hmm. I mean, a whole for the season. I would go leave early in the morning, get home real late at night, do private house calls. I'd do as high as 15, 20 house calls on Christmas Eve. And I have delivered everything from pigs, goats, even a brand new Buick one night to a woman. Had ribbons on, had to stop and take them off because of the ice storm.
Oh, my.
But I have done just about anything you want. I went to all the hospitals down in the Baltimore and Washington area. Some of the children that I went to see, I was probably the last one they talked to. Mm. And, I just got so that I enjoy it, and it's just part of my life.
Mr. Kline, how old are you as we speak right now?
84. I'll be 85 in March.
Wow. That's amazing. And you say you've been doing this since the early 60s. That is quite the testament that you have. I'm going to hit you with a memory. I think when you say Santa Claus to any adult, they have a particular memory that they go back to in their minds. I think there's one that always stands out for everybody. And if there isn't, I feel bad for that person because those memories are so cherished. And mine, when anyone says to me, having grown up in the south end of Hagerstown, when I hear the name Santa Claus, one thing comes to mind, and that is the Bester Carnival.
Oh, yes.
And I'm going to let you take this part of it, but just to give you an idea, to take everyone back to me as a child, The Bester Carnival was, in my opinion, the best carnival that there was in our area. And look forward to it every single year. And we would enter the carnival grounds between the school and what was, Mr. Kline, was it a fire company food stand?
Yeah, Antietam Fire Company had that carnival. I run the food stand for about, I guess, close to 20 years.
Right.
I made all the food. I closed my own business, which is Kline's Auto Body, for a week to go out there and spend the whole day out there fixing food and everything for nighttime. And it was a lot of memories from that place. It always has been. I still belong to Engine 2, 3, and 4. Right now. I just did Santa for Engine 4 this past Sunday.
Right.
For their party.
When I would walk by the stand, my parents would say, "There's Santa. He's making the French fries." And two things came to mind. A, there's Santa. And B, wait a minute, why is Santa making French fries? You know, as a child, you believe these things so innocently. And for the better part of, maybe 5 or 6 years, I suppose, it became this almost like a Where's Waldo is Where's Santa, but you knew where he was. And I remember several times, Mr. Kline, I'll never get these images out of my head. There were some tables set up where people could eat their food. And later on, when it was less busy, there would literally be kids sitting on your lap at one of those tables. And I want you to know that you have given such timeless memories like that. And I'm sure that you hear those all the time.
Yes, I do, because like I say, I have been doing this for 55 years. I left my own beard grow. I've had my own beard and hair for probably the last 46, 47 years, something like that there. I try to keep it as white as possible by using, I got a special shampoo I use, but also I use Comet, which keeps the yellow out of it. And I always try to keep myself looking pretty clean, even when I had body shop and painting cars all the time.
Sure.
I did the same thing. But I go to a restaurant to eat. The children come up to me, talk to me. I will take and talk to them. The parents come apologize. I said, look, I don't want an apology.
Yeah.
That's what I'm here for. I'm here for the children. And that's just the way I feel about it.
If you could, Mr. Kline, just give us maybe one or two examples here. I've always wanted to ask you this very question. What would you say is your favorite memory or just one that stands out to you from your 55 years of doing this for the community?
I've had so many of them, it's hard really to pick out one. But I had 33 wonderful years at Long Meadow Shopping Center. And I had a lot of memories from there. We had 300-400 people lined up in front of the shopping center when I'd come in on Black Friday.
Right.
And like I say, it's just I had a lot of time with Lou Scally, with Debbie Hunt was in charge of them out there then, and I just had a lot of good years out there. We would feed everybody. My mother, which just passed away at 103 and a half.
Wow.
She would be there. She helped to take and feed all the firefighters and everybody that participated in it, and she'd make Buckeyes for them and everything. And I got so many years of so many things. It's hard to pick just one.
Oh, I'm sure, but I'm so glad that your overall greatest memory was something that was encapsulated over the course of over 30 years at the Long Meadow Shopping Center. And I remember those times at the Long Meadow Shopping Center. I grew up in the south end of Hagerstown for the first 16 years of my life. I now live in Waynesboro. But when someone says Santa to me, it's you. And I want you to know how unique you are, but not in our area. I've talked to people from all over the country and had wonderful conversations about their childhood, their memories, many of which stem from Christmas. And I have yet to hear anyone reference a local Santa, a gentleman who played Santa in their area that is that legacy individual. I'm not saying that those gentlemen don't exist. I'm simply saying that I have never heard of one. And I want to say on behalf of our area, thank you so much for being the Santa for generations and generations of individuals.
Well, Well, thank you.
It's so wonderful that I've been able to talk to you today on the podcast, and I consider it quite the honor. And I'd like to, if I could, for you, sir, your Facebook page, which is Kline's Auto Body East.
Right.
And it's funny. I reached out to a photographer who had done some photos with you recently, and said, "Oh my goodness, is Mr. Kline doing any more photos this year?" And the reason that I ask that, before I break into some dates here, the good news is that yes, but before I break into some dates, the reason I ask that, Mr. Kline, is, and I'm sure you've heard this before, but this just goes to prove how long-lasting the memories are that you're part of, is that I'm going to be coming to one of these times that I'm about to go over where you're going to be offering pictures with Santa, and I'll be bringing my daughter, and she will be the third generation that has had you as their Santa.
I've got families that I got 4 and 5 generations that still come to me every year.
It's wonderful, and I'm so sorry. I get emotional, but it means a lot.
Well, I do too. I got too emotional yesterday when we had Baltimore station come up here, TV station, and interviewed me.
Wow.
For about almost 2 hours out at the Little Jack Corner daycare, and interviewed all the parents and the teachers and the children and everybody there for almost 2 hours, and I started getting emotional there.
Yeah, it's just it's incredible, sir. You're such a treasure. You truly are. Just one for the ages, and I pray that God blesses you with many more healthy years, that you can keep making the impact that you have, because especially in today's world, there's nothing we need more than the spirit of Christmas and the spirit of Santa Claus, and to know that it lives in you is just the high honor, and I want you to know that you mean so much to our area, and I hope that anyone who hears this goes to one of these dates here that I'm about to say. Like I said, as we record this is December 15th. The next time, this is the final schedule for this year, and you will be able to see Santa at Kline's Auto Body East at 12010 Margaret Drive in Hagerstown. It is a memory that you will cherish forever. The 16th, which is 4 until 7 p.m., coming up this Friday from 4 until 7 p.m. as well. On Sunday, the 19th, he'll be there from noon until 5. On Monday, the 20th, from 4 until 7 p.m., and Thursday, the 23rd, from 1 until 5 p.m. Now, obviously, that schedule is subject to change, but as it stands right now, Mr. Kline will be there. Santa Claus will be in full regalia. So how does that work, Mr. Kline? Is there a charge for that? Is it your own camera? How do you like to do that?
Everybody brings their own camera, take their own pictures. We don't do it anymore. There's no charge. We do have a donation box that we put out, and that's whatever they want to put in. If you don't want to put in, it doesn't matter to me. Most of it goes to charity anyhow. And I don't know if you're still recording or not, but 3.5 years ago in May, I bled to death from a warfarin. They brought me back, and I did it that year, even after I was sick. This year, on November the 5th, I went down, spent 13 days in the hospital, and had pneumonia, full of fluid, and my heart went crazy. So now I just had a transplant defibrillator and pacemaker put in. I wasn't allowed to do anything until the 1st of December, but I've slacked off a little bit this year. But I'm still trying to do all my regulars and take care of the ones out the garage and stuff like that there. But I will be back next year.
Absolutely. Well, like I said a little bit ago, I pray you have many more years left in you. But even if you decided tomorrow that you were going to retire as Santa Claus, I want you to know that you have impacted generation after generation. Like I said, my daughter will be generation 3 that grew up with Bud Kline as Santa Claus. And Mr. Kline, I won't keep you. You've been so gracious with your time, and the spirit of Christmas certainly lives on in you. You're a wonderful man, and I pray that everyone gets to go and meet you before this season is up. And again, if you want that entire schedule that I just read off, you can find it on Kline's Auto Body East Facebook page, and it is simply that, Kline's Auto Body East. Mr. Kline, have a Merry Christmas, Santa. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. I love you so much. I hope to see you one of these coming days, okay?
Yeah, Merry Christmas to you. And I got well over 100 get well cards.
Wow.
From the hospital. I even had some of the children brought me gifts.
Wow, it's unbelievable. You know what? Actually, it doesn't surprise me at all. And I'll tell you what, Mr. Kline said that when you show up there to get a picture that he has a little donation box. Let's fill that up because, like he said, most of it goes to charity. If you're hearing this, you may have already gotten a picture with Santa at some point. If you don't have a picture with Mr. Kline as Santa, you're missing out. And I'm assuming you even let the adults jump in for a picture from time to time, don't you?
Yes, I do.
All right, Mr. Kline. Well, hey, take care of yourself. Merry Christmas, and I'll turn you loose back to work, okay?
Okay, Merry Christmas to you, and I hope to see you.
Local and live, covering Franklin and Washington counties, it's Let's Talk Tri-State with Tiny and Katie.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Tri-State, all powered by Home Right Windows and Doors. I'm Tiny, and I am not joined by Katie this time. My co-host is, I should say I'm the co-host, actually, because I think he's the host. Please welcome Michael Kendrick. Michael, how are you?
Good. How you doing, Tiny?
I'm doing great. Michael and I, we go way back.
Yes,
My
we
goodness, you were a senior, I believe, at Washington County Tech High.
Yep.
And I was long-term substitute there.
Yep.
And I remember at some point along the way, you told me who your grandfather was. You said, he's my pap. I distinctly remember you using those words. And I couldn't get over it. I couldn't believe it. Wow. Bud Kline's grandson is right here. That's got to be amazing. So before we get to you and what you're doing now, let's go through your story, Michael Kendrick. Tell us where you grew up, and then what do you do for a living? Anything that you're willing to share about you.
Okay. I was born and raised in Hagerstown all my life. I work for Beaver Creek Storage Units and car washes, doing maintenance there now. And I have 2 children and a fiance. Like I said, just born and raised in Hagerstown, and that's about it.
So let's go through this part of your story, because I think this is the part that anyone who's watching this from the tri-state area would want to have this conversation with you, or this would probably be the question. Like when I'm out somewhere talking to people and they find out what I do for a living, they always want to talk about the radio, right?
Yes.
Okay. Same thing has to be the case for you. They always want to talk about your grandfather.
Yep.
Once they find out, okay? Take us back in time, if you would. What was it like growing up with Bud Kline being your grandfather?
Well, ever since I was little, my grandparents would take me to school. My mom would have to go to work early, so she would drop us off at their house. Grandma and Papa would always make sure we got to school, got us home from school, and then we'd go back to their house, and I would go down and work in the body shop or do whatever I had to. But I also helped Pap out doing Rudolph and Santa Claus when I was younger. I guess that's probably how I got started, and seeing what Pap did and what his legacy grew to.
Was he Pap to you? Was he Santa to you? Was there a time where the two kind of mixed a little bit? I can imagine as you grew up with him. Obviously, he's your Pap from birth. But was there ever a story of where you thought to yourself, "Is my Pap Santa?"
I'd say it's a little bit of both. My children called him Pappy Ho Ho.
Okay.
So, I mean, it was just one of those things where we knew what he did and his legacy. And then in like the summer when we went on vacation, we'd be down Myrtle Beach and people would come up to him down there at the restaurant and say hi, and he would get his card out and hand it to them, and treat the kids just like it was at Christmas time.
Sure. Christmas in July.
Yes.
Basically, when he's down, I can imagine. As he was telling me, and you heard in the podcast, wherever he would go,
Yep.
Restaurants didn't matter, especially in our area. Kids would come up to him, and the parents would apologize because he's just trying to have dinner. But not only was he okay with it, he welcomed it. That he said, as everyone heard in the podcast a few minutes ago, that he was here for the children.
Yes, he loved that.
Yeah.
He was all for the children.
He was, I would say, if there was ever a man who was custom made to be Santa, your grandfather had to have been it.
I agree.
Yeah, and I told him in the podcast 3 years ago, I said, Bud, I don't know that there's any other area that I've been or anyone I've talked to from different areas who has that legacy Santa Claus like we did. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
he was Hagerstown Santa. He was the Tri-State Santa. Everyone in the Tri-State area knew Bud Kline. You'd see him at the mall, at a restaurant, wherever. And because I remember my parents would say, there's Bud Kline's here. And even though I was still young enough to where I believed in Santa Claus, it didn't strike me as strange that they called him Bud Kline.
Yes.
You know what I mean? He was still Santa. Like he was still the real deal. He's still the guy, but just turns out Santa's real name is Bud Kline.
Yep.
Like who knew? I feel like I had the scoop that no one else had, right?
Yep.
So let me ask you this now. Do you have a favorite story of your grandfather?
My favorite would probably be one of the reasons why I got into this. He used to go down to the Kenny Kruger Center down in the city, and we went down there one year. I was probably a teenager, and I was dressed up like Rudolph, and Pap was in there seeing everyone, and we had Rudolph and Frosty with us, and there was a small child that was laying there, and I probably sat with that child for 45 minutes to an hour, just lighting up my nose, and he was just laying in the bed, and I mean, it just made his day.
Sure.
And I got to see, what Pap brought to those children, knowing that they were in the hospital and not going to get out for Christmas, more than likely.
Right.
And the joy that he brought to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, quite an amazing man. I know he did that a lot. And Santa Claus always, I don't know, now obviously you see stories and you see videos and things of kids who freak out and start crying and carrying on when they see Santa. But by and large, you're hard pressed to find anyone who sees Santa and a smile doesn't come to your face.
Yes.
And I am sure, just as it's doing for you now, that would light up your grandfather.
Yes.
To see that smile that he would bring to people's faces. I love telling the story. I told it in the podcast, but for those who didn't catch the replay of the podcast a few minutes ago, the Bester Carnival to me was the premier carnival in our area. It was Bester in Boonesboro, and your grandfather was always making fries.
Yep.
With the fire company, and it was a common occurrence that as a kid, you want to go to the carnival, and B, when you do, who else do you see there making French fries? Santa Claus.
Yep.
Naturally, Santa Claus is making fries. And then you'd sit on his lap, tell him what you want for Christmas. Here we are. It was May or June, whatever the month of the year was. But that was a normal sighting, and that is so unique to this area. And your grandfather brought so many memories. I'd like to, before we talk about how you got into doing what it is that you're doing now, which is not difficult to see what you're doing now. Like I said, I did that interview with your grandfather 3 years ago. At the time, he said he had been doing Santa Claus for 55 years.
Yeah.
And that means that he ultimately wound up doing Santa Claus for a little over 57 years.
Yes.
So almost 60 years. This is probably going to be difficult for probably both of us, both Michael and myself.
It definitely will be.
But I think that your grandfather deserves to be remembered over and over and over again. Okay. Floyd Hubert Kline, Jr., 86, of Hagerstown, Maryland, passed away on Saturday, December 2nd, 2023 at Meredith Medical Center. Born March 18, 1937 in Boonesboro, he was a son of the late Floyd Kline Sr. and Sarah Virginia Kline. In addition to his parents, he was also preceded in death by one son, William Bill Kline, and one brother, Kenneth Kline. He was a 1955 graduate of South Hagerstown High School. Mr. Kline was owner and operator of Kline's Auto Body and previously worked as an auto mechanic and body shop tech for Litton's, Amico, and Middlecoff Chrysler. He also was known for being Santa Claus for fire departments, daycares, nursing homes, churches around the Hagerstown area. He was a member of Grace United Methodist Church of Hagerstown, the Moose Lodge, Williamsport FOP, Arch Auto Racing Club of Hagerstown, and the Alsatia Club of Hagerstown. Mr. Kline is survived by his loving wife of 64 years, Doris Jean, 2 children, Randy Kline and Debbie Kendrick, 1 brother, Bob Kline, 3 sisters, Donna Ridenauer, Betty Beiser, Nellie Armstrong, 3 grandchildren, William Billy Kline II, Michael Kendrick II, and Megan Wolf, 5 great-grandchildren, Cameron, Casey, Hunter, Blake, and Riley, and 1 great-great-granddaughter, Evelyn Kline, and several nieces and nephews. So last year, we just passed the 1-year anniversary of the passing of your grandfather. One thing that I didn't expect was, like I said, I've known you for years. When your grandfather passed last year, thankfully, he was able to do a couple appearances.
Yes, he was.
Last year. His very last appearance my daughter got her final picture with your grandfather. And that was so special. Look back. Oh, there we go. So super special to look back on those pictures, those memories and those moments. And just knowing that he got to do it one last time. And last year, no matter what, he had told me was going to be it. That was the last year he was going to be able to do
it. He was getting to where he couldn't do it anymore.
Right. Yeah. His health had, taken a toll on him. And he deserves to be able to retire from that. And, because as he described to me, my goodness, Michael, it was a lot of stress on his body. He would do, house visits and all of that. If his health had held up, I was going to see if he would visit my house for my daughter. I know she would have loved that. But that wasn't meant to be. But what was meant to be is what's happening now. Again, I didn't expect this, but one day I see on Facebook that the Kline name is carrying on under the Santa hat in the form of you. How did this come to be that you would take up the mantle of your grandfather and become Santa Claus?
Well, it all started probably before Pap. Every time I'd see him, he would ask me, are you going to carry on? Mm-hmm. And I'd always tell him, that's your legacy.
Right.
So when he got bad, he got a hold of a good family friend of ours, Chris, who goes by Santa Claus Jr. on Facebook. Mm-hmm. And Chris took over the rest of the stuff he had for last year. And a couple months ago, Chris called me, and he says, I'm really busy. He says, would you mind doing out the shop? And I've been tinkering around with it. I wasn't 100% sure I was ready. But Chris is like, you're as ready as I was. He says, you've been around him all your life. You've seen it. You know what you're doing. So I kind of blew it off for a little bit. And actually, me and my fiance was heading up 81 to go to her parents' house. And she goes, did you ever text Chris back? I said, no. And she grabbed my phone and she texted him back. She goes, I'm going to text him for you because you're just going to beat around the bush and not do it. So she texted him back, told him I'd do it, and here we are. So, and Chris, I got to give it to him. He's really stepped up. He brought back the Black Friday thing this year.
Oh, okay.
It's not at Lometta. It was at Lowe's this year, trying to bring back Pap's legacy. Mm-hmm. And we've been in contact a lot. And he's like, how cool is it that, two of us can carry on Pap's legacy? Mm-hmm. And that it takes two of us to carry on what he did.
Yeah.
And I never realized how much it was. I mean, I can remember on Christmas Eve, we'd always go to Grandma and Pap's when I was a kid, and Pap wouldn't get done till 11 or 12 o'clock at night. And then we'd go up there and get our gifts and go home and go to bed. Mm-hmm. And then he'd get back up the next morning and he'd go somewhere else. I mean, pretty much the whole month of December, he was gone nonstop doing Santa Claus for everywhere.
Everywhere and everybody.
Yes.
Yeah. So you are now setting up shop, essentially, pardon the pun, at Kline's Auto Body Shop.
Yep.
When can folks see you play Santa Claus at Kline's Auto Body?
I'm at my uncle's shop, Kline's Auto Body, tomorrow evening, Wednesday evening, Thursday evening, Friday evening, from 5 to 7. And then Saturday, I'm at Beaver Creek Storage Units from 10 to 1. Okay. And Sunday, I'm back at Kline's Auto Body from 1 to 4, I believe. And then Monday, I'm doing back at Kline's Auto Body from 5 to 7.
Okay, so that'd be the 23rd.
Yes, and then
is that the final appearance for the year?
That's the final appearance for me. I was just trying to keep it small and get my feet wet, and it's not been easy.
Right.
But I feel like he's been guiding me through it.
Oh yeah, no doubt in my mind, Michael. Like you said, it takes two to fill those shoes.
It does.
And even then, I don't know that they'll ever be filled. But the fact that your grandfather wanted you to do it says that he believed in you, that you were the one who would carry on the legacy. And I agree with that. I think you're doing a phenomenal job. And when your grandfather passed away last year, it left a void. Hagerstown needed a Santa. Or I should say they needed a Santa. They needed Santa.
Yes.
They got it. So you keep doing what you're doing. Have a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. And I can tell you without question, your grandfather was very proud of you, and he's looking down on you right now, and he loves everything you're doing. And he's glad that it continues. And I wish you many years of success playing Santa Claus, okay?
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for joining us on Let's Talk Tri-State. Michael Kendrick plays Santa Claus now. His grandfather, Bud Kline, played him for almost 60 years. Go see him, Kline's Auto Body, as well as Beaver Creek Storage and Car Washes. That's all coming up the rest of this week into this weekend. Final appearance coming up on the 23rd, taking Christmas Eve and Christmas Day off and enjoying a well-deserved rest. And I'm sure we'll be back in 2025.
If you'd like to be featured on an upcoming episode of Let's Talk Tri-State, call 717-597-9200 or email letstalk@921thegoat.com.